People's instincts are to correct them. We advise not to correct them because once they're not remembering things, they've lost the ability to remember things. So reminding them over and over and over can bring about guilt and shame. They can start to feel like a burden.
Welcome to Baptist Health Talk, a podcast on all things healthcare, powered by Baptist Health South Florida, your trusted source for healthcare prevention and wellness.
I'm your host, Willard Shepard, and welcome back to a new episode of Baptist Health Talk, where we answer the questions you searched the most on the topics that are trending. Today, we're discussing what to expect after a loved one is diagnosed with Alzheimer's and how to start caring for them. We are joined by Sandi Zelniker, clinical social worker and care navigator at Marcus Neuroscience Institute at Boca Raton Regional Hospital, part of Baptist Health, and Cindy Maurer, caregiver to her husband, who was diagnosed with early onset dementia. Thank you, first of all, for both of you being here and you for being able to tell your personal story and helping our audience today. First of all, this diagnosis comes in. What's the first thing that has to be done?
Well, the first thing that has to be done, it's usually the family members that notice a change in memory. They make an appointment with the doctor. They see the doctor and they do all kinds of cognitive tests. Maybe they're referred to a neuropsychologist in our office. Following the tests in the office, the doctor orders an MRI. And if Alzheimer's is suspected, a PET scan is ordered to confirm that diagnosis. They look for amyloid plaque there. In addition, some blood work is ordered. Once everything is back, the patients and the families meet with the doctor and they get an answer. And that's really where social work comes in. We're called in to counsel the families and to provide resources. We look at three components from a social work perspective when we're meeting with patients and families for the first time. We look at emotional, social, and psychological. Emotional, how are they doing? Obviously, getting a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia can be very devastating. Does the person need counseling? Do they want to be connected with a therapist? Does the caregiver want to be connected with a therapist? Those are all things that we do. Social, we have an eye on whether or not the person is socially isolated, because being active, having social interactions physically and mentally is very, very important. And psychologically, how advanced is the disease? Mm-hmm. Does the person need, is the person agitated, or are they becoming angry? Do they need medications for that? Does the family need counseling around that? Those are all things we do once somebody is diagnosed, and we connect families and patients to resources.
Well, your team's obviously doing a fantastic job here at Baptist. You're on the other side of that table when that conversation comes in. How do you cope with that? I imagine you took a deep breath, and what's next?
So many things are next. And I'm so grateful that Sandi and her team are there to help, because there's so many things you have to do besides taking care of your husband. Now my entire life got blown up, as everybody does with this. And it's just a matter of prioritizing and figuring out what's first. And once you get the diagnosis, getting the proper medication, getting perhaps if they're willing to go into programs, or looking at caregivers, and keeping an eye on expenses when all this is happening, and knowing how to navigate insurance. Luckily, I've been in insurance with my career, so I sort of had a lot more direction than some other folks do. So,
tell us more about your husband's diagnosis and exactly what you were told.
Well, my husband's diagnosis came right on the heels of COVID, and it was a different neurologist than this office. And he came out with 2 masks on his face, and, he had gotten the MRI and the PET scan, and we sat in the lobby because everybody was afraid at that point and didn't know what to do. And he said, "Your husband has dementia. I'm prescribing Aricept." And that was it. And my husband was there too. And at that point, he was like, and I was also, and I had to make light of it. You learn therapeutic lies with this disease. And I said, it's okay. We'll go somewhere else. So, and I sort of knew it was coming, because I could tell by the changes in his behavior and in his mood, et cetera, that, I wasn't surprised, let's say, when we finally got a diagnosis.
When you're taking care of a family, I'm sure you look at this as a family unit.
Absolutely.
That you have a person who has a diagnosis, but then you also have a caregiver. What is the advice to a caregiver? How do you get them on the right track after what is obviously a big blow?
Excellent question. So the first thing we advise caregivers is to educate themselves, and we provide a lot of education about the disease. There's many different kinds of dementia. Educate yourself and understand what could be down the road. With that said, we don't want to scare people because everybody progresses differently at a different rate. Educate yourself, be kind to yourself, find a support group. At Marcus Neuro Institute, our nurse navigator, Daisy, and I run a caregiver support group. It meets monthly. We are also beginning on July 1st, we're beginning educational classes where we're going to talk about behavioral changes, all kinds of things. Behavioral changes, resources, adult day programs, anything you can think of. So we'll be providing families with education. So find a social support, find people you can talk to, educate yourself, and be kind to yourself. Engage in self-care. And if you're having difficulty accepting the diagnosis, reach out to a therapist. We can certainly refer any caregiver to a provider.
How did the strategies differ? Like I mentioned to you, my dad had Parkinson's, which has some of these types of things, whether it's Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. How do the strategies differ concerning the diagnosis?
Another excellent question. So for example, Lewy body dementia is a dementia that can mimic Parkinson's, and people diagnosed with Lewy body dementia in the more moderate to advanced stages have Parkinsonian-like symptoms. So strategies would be more around mobility, we can send somebody in to do a free home safety evaluation, durable medical equipment. Also, unfortunately, in the later stages, those patients can have hallucinations. So obviously medication management. With frontal temporal dementia, which is in the frontal part of the brain, very different symptoms. So those patients are more prone to wandering. So we can educate families about ID bracelets, necklaces. They're more prone to disinhibition. So it's very important to have somebody with that person at all time, because you may see somebody on the street and that person may say, I don't like your shirt, or, I think you're fat, because there's no filter anymore. So it's very, very important to have somebody with them. Whereas Alzheimer's in the advanced stages, there's a lot of psychomotor agitation, and very oftentimes patients can become violent. So there's a big team approach around those patients. We have, like I said, a nurse navigator, myself and the doctor. We're in constant contact with those families, monitoring the medication, see what can be increased, what can be changed to help with the psychomotor agitation. So depending on the diagnosis, we take a different approach.
Very quickly, and I just use my dad as an example, and where are we with the medications, since you mentioned them in this family of diagnosis? He hated it when he took the medications because it made him so lethargic. He was a golfer, but it stopped the tremors and those types of things. When it comes to treatments in these areas for Alzheimer's, dementia, what kind of progress have we made in the medications so a person can live and be active and communicate the best they can and not become so lethargic?
Yeah, so there's two infusion medications which were recently approved on the market, Kisunla and Leqembi. There are different qualifications, different tests that need to be run before those are administered and during the administration part of it to make sure that the patient is able to tolerate the medications. There's also oral medications, memantine, donzapil, and those medications can slow the progression. We have to be very careful when we prescribe these medications to look at the whole person, what their other medical conditions are, and see if those medications are contraindicated. So there has been progress in slowing down the progression of the disease. With that said, it has to be monitored very carefully.
So you have this blow and your life changes. What did you see initially, and what has progressed and its impact on your husband and also yourself?
Well, I'm happy to say my husband was not the type of man that didn't listen or pay attention to me when I spoke. It wasn't like, yeah. He wasn't like that. So his attention to me and other things was not there. And that was the first indication. He was also really not engaged in the things he liked to do. He was always an athlete. He played golf. He played sports. He was in very good shape. Really didn't have any interest anymore. He's from a big family, wasn't really engaged with them. So those were things to me. Then he started to forget stuff. Some of the phone calls I would get was, I don't know where I am. And my mom had dementia, and actually his mother too. So a lot of these things were indicators to me of things were changing. So, really the first step in a diagnosis, and especially for someone who's under 65, not on Medicare, et cetera, you have to go to your primary care physician, who will then refer you to the neurologist, who will then, do the MRIs and other tests. So from that moment on to this moment, things have changed. He still recognizes me. He knows I'm his wife. Mm-hmm. He is residing in a memory care facility now because it becomes, for some of us, a safety issue. And he started to wander. And even though I had AirTags and GeoBits and all sorts of devices from the Alzheimer's Association, it's a real danger because his speech was changing and he couldn't articulate if he got lost, I'm lost, please help. So it was a combination of things, and I just couldn't really take care of him in the house anymore. Having said that, I knew from day one that day would come eventually, because it does.
You and your husband were very proactive, but what about people at the very beginning? What are some of the things that we should all be on the lookout for to maybe say we need to come and see you and your team?
Absolutely. So one of the big things that I push, usually in the first session, some families are very resistant to it, is planning. Long-term care planning. So very important. All people, in my opinion, over 18 should have advanced directives, a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney. There could come a point in a dementia, major neurocognitive disorder, where the person doesn't have capacity to appoint someone to be their proxy. So it's very important to do that early, and we can provide referrals to attorneys who do that. It's also very important to plan with assets, financial planning, Medicaid planning. There are ways to get Medicaid, even if you have over the income and asset level, if you work with an attorney to protect those income and assets. That's very important, because if a person has to go into either independent living, assisted living, or a memory care unit, Medicaid will pay $1,800 off the top of the costs. And these facilities can be very expensive. So that's one of the things we talk about. The other thing is if diagnoses are advanced, like Cindy was talking about, the way her husband became, is we talk about if the patient is not ready for a memory care unit, we talk about things like socializing, adult day programs. There are a lot of adult day programs where you could drop your loved one off if they need supervision, they need stimulation from 8:30 to 4:30. They can be very costly. I have found one that has 11 locations that has unbelievable grants and scholarships available. So depending on your income, we have one patient, he can go every single day for $148 a month. And based on the other person's income, he has to pay nothing, zero, and he can go as often as he needs to. So as a social worker, I find all of these resources, whatever the need is, I try to plug the hole and overcome barriers so that our patients can get the support and our families can get the supports that they need.
You talk about families getting support. Headlines are showing that generally it's a woman who is the caregiver. What advice is there for making this a family operation and doesn't fall solely on a spouse, primarily a woman?
So it's very interesting because I did a little bit of research. I knew I was going to be asked that question. And with major cognitive disorders, it's about 50-50. And that's pretty much what we see in our practice. So we see a lot of men actually as well taking care of their spouses, of their sisters, of their even young onset daughters. And we see women as well. So what advice would I give them is to have open, honest communication with the family, plan for the future, have family meetings very often. We see families where there's not a lot of good communication, and Daisy or I can facilitate family meetings and also have realistic expectations about what can and cannot be done. Because in the end, we have to start where the patient is at, and we can't push things on them if they're not willing to do them.
Okay. We've heard about the sandwich generation. The good thing is we're all living longer, which is a good thing for all of us. But so many families now have a child or multiple children, and they're also taking care of their parents. How do you think that impacts taking care of a person when this diagnosis is now injected into it and you're in it? So let me ask you first.
Yes, I'm in it. And as I said before, my husband's from a big family. So one sister's in Arizona, one brother is in Harrison, one brother's in Long Island, and one sister's in Brooklyn, and his son is in California. So that being said, we're all far apart. And I am in the sandwich generation. I mean, my mother has passed. It's really hard. You know, I follow a lot of Facebook groups, and as much as my husband was young when he got diagnosed, there are families where, you know, it's a 32-year-old woman who has babies and her husband was diagnosed. It's a devastating diagnosis. It changes life financially, which all the things that Sandi said you do need to do because those things should be planned anyway. So it's an overwhelming responsibility. From so many sides, but you do it out of love.
What tips do you have for people who were you when you got that diagnosis on the first day and to move forward in a positive direction?
That's a great question. I too would read everything and get all the resources locally. First step would be to contact the local Alzheimer's Association, your Shine group, your elders, attorneys, if you don't have those documents in order. I think the very first thing is to get financial and medical power of attorney. You can download that stuff online. You don't even need to go to an attorney to do that because you're going to wind up speaking for your loved one to doctors, to their insurance company, to everybody. I carry a little card that says, please be patient. My partner has dementia, and it says, thank you. And I will give that like when we're in a restaurant. So just anything, any information you can get. And when you contact your insurance company, ask them if there are any programs that they have in place. Sometimes, you know, they have a lot of stuff that they can offer to that person, but it's hard.
Have you come across something that you love to do and you enjoy to do and you find that it brings you solace, pickleball, whatever it may be?
Pickleball's coming next year. I know that.
Okay.
Actually, I found, I don't like to say a flotation tank. That's what they used to be called, but it's a place where you can float for an hour in darkness or with music on. It's a lovely thing to do. And I just like doing that. And it's very relaxing to me, and it doesn't have to be dark. So it's a float. Float 8 is the company. I don't know. It's all through Florida, I think. So that to me was a good thing to do for myself.
I imagine it can be frightening if the loved one becomes agitated, they get confused. How do you cope with that?
So we get a lot of calls. Daisy and I get a lot of calls about that. The first thing we do is we guide the families, just stay calm, try to redirect. Reminiscence therapy is very good with our patients. They really enjoy looking at old photos. So if you find your loved one, you know, in an episode of agitation, certainly try to redirect. Again, have realistic expectations. The next thing we do, if we can't, you know, calm them down with even old music that they used to like, is, you know, we'll try with medication. So we get all the information, we pass it along to the doctor. The doctor can prescribe something, taking into account all the other health issues, all of the other medications that the patient is on. And then Daisy and I follow up with those families regularly. Has there been an improvement? If not, maybe the doctor can go up on the medication or change the medication. So that's how we handle that. It's really important, though, with triggers, I want to stress this, for families to pay attention. Pay attention. What happened right before the trigger? Even to to write it down and have a log. When did they become irritable? When did they become angry? To see if you can modify the trigger. Maybe it was before bath time, because maybe they don't like to take baths or showers, and maybe they're sundowning at night. So maybe the bath or shower could be given in the middle of the day or in the morning, so that trigger is extinguished. So we try all different ways, but keeping a log and trying to modify the trigger can be helpful.
Your loved one gets confused, they're forgetting things. Should you correct them? How should you manage that?
People's instincts are to correct them. We advise not to correct them, because once they're not remembering things, they've lost the ability to remember things. So reminding them over and over and over can bring about guilt and shame. They can start to feel like a burden. So a couple tips we like to tell people to redirect. You know, if they keep asking the same question over, what are we having for lunch? What are we having for lunch? Oh, this afternoon we're going to go walk. We're going to take a walk. We're going to go to the pool. We're going to exercise a little bit in the pool. Change the subject. Also, we advise keeping a calendar, a big calendar, somewhere in the house, in the kitchen, in the living room. Put appointments on there for the patients, but not until the day before. Because if you put it on too early, they're going to keep asking, when are we going? When are we going? This way you can say, you know what, I have it on the calendar and I just put it on. And it kind of takes some of the pressure off of the patients.
What about a daily routine? I'm a military person, so I'm pretty regimented about if you do the same thing every day, you'll have success.
So
what about that?
Daily routine is imperative for our patients. We get a lot of resistance. That's one question I ask in the screening is, what do you do when you wake up every morning? What do you do throughout your day? So for a lot of these patients, a lot of these people, they're retired, their family members are retired, they don't have a structured routine. So as a social worker, I go through their day with them in the office, and we try to come up with a schedule, whether it be taking a walk one day, whether it be going to get a haircut one day, whether it be, taking a ride to the beach one day, whatever it is, whatever brings you joy, we try to incorporate that into the routine. And it's good when the patient leaves that they have 7 days, even if it's for an hour, just to get up and to get out every day. Have meals, try to have meals at the same time every day. It really does help.
What strategies do you have with your husband, keeping him connected, making him feel his own self-worth and valuable?
Like Sandi said, very much routine. Keep to a routine, and even when I see him, because now he's in a facility, I'll ask the same question. So what's been going on? I usually get the same answer. I just like to keep him engaged. He loves music, so I found that driving in the car with him, it doesn't even matter. He just loves to sing along to music. And I meet him at his level. For example, we passed a building. His dad never lived in Florida. And he said, oh, my dad worked there. I said, oh, yeah, what did he do? He couldn't really answer me, but I just stayed where he's at in his conversation, in his reality. I find that's better for him. It's better for me. I don't correct him. There's no reason to. He doesn't understand it. So it's better for both of us to just be in the same place. So, very simple tasks: driving, listening to music, lollipops that he likes, things, little fidget spinners. He likes to do that. He likes puzzles. We do puzzles, and I'll say, what's going on? And I'll bring things up in the news. And he's like, yeah, I heard that. I know he doesn't watch the news, but it's okay. It keeps him engaged and it keeps him somewhat present.
This is a long haul for many families. So how do they handle that? What advice do you have for making this a marathon? It's not a sprint.
I would say check in with us often. We start with patients and families where they're at. Very often in the initial visit, there's a lot of denial. There's a lot of hurt, a lot of upset. As time progresses, we build rapport with families. And then as needs come up, I do find that they call very regularly to find out about the resources. A lot of people don't want to talk about the future. So we can't push that. I do push a little bit the advanced directives and the financial planning, because that is planning and that can affect somebody long term. But otherwise, we really are where they're at, and we're always available to them, no matter what stage in the process they're in, to guide them appropriately.
Tell us all about the GUIDE program at the Marcus Neuroscience Institute and how it's helping.
So the guide program is starting on July 1st, 2025. We're really excited about it. It's a program through Medicare. It's a comprehensive plan for patients that have a major neurocognitive disorder. You cannot have an Advantage plan if you want to qualify for guide. And it's going to be an amazing program. What it's going to offer is 24 access to somebody on the care team. There will be a number that people can call. It's going to offer educational classes through our office weekly, the support groups as we're having, collaboration with the patient's primary care physician and or referring provider, whether it be a neurologist, a cardiologist, whoever it is. And one of the biggest things that I'm excited about is if somebody's enrolled in the guide program, they are going to get $2,500 a year towards respite care. So respite care could mean home care, could mean adult day program, could mean you as the caregiver have an event out of town, you have a wedding, could be staying in a facility, an appropriate facility, respite facility for a couple of days and that while your family's out of town, and that would cover that. So there will be lots of advantages to the guide program, and we're really looking forward to it. We hope to have 200 patients enrolled at a minimum within the first 2 years.
Oh, fantastic. Well, great admiration and respect for you and all you're doing to care for your husband and reaching out and telling your story so that people who are coming into this can follow the lead you've set, and obviously all of your expertise in this area. Great conversation today. We really appreciate you sharing this with the audience today. And remember, viewers, be sure to hit that subscribe button on our channel here to keep up with the latest health and wellness information and tips from our experts. Thanks for watching.
Find additional valuable health and wellness information on our resource blog at baptisthealth.net/news. And be sure to interact with us on our social media channels for live and upcoming events. Baptist Health Talk is brought to you by Baptist Health, the warmer side of care.